Good evening. Tempe Union continues to maintain social distancing for the safety of our community. The open meeting law permits a public body to hold a remote meeting through technological means and implement procedures designed to safeguard the public's access to the meeting. We are streaming this meeting live on the district's YouTube channel. The time is now 6:00 p.m. Call this meeting to order. Let the record show that we have 5 board members present, and I move to adopt the agenda. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, we are here today for item B1, Arizona House Bill 2898 for mitigation strategies. Dr. Mendeville.
Thank you, President Garcia, Vice President Barraza, members of the board, executive team members, and our viewing and listening audience. Thank you for taking the time, spending your time with us this evening. This category is around mitigation strategies, but our recommended action is around the discussion and action around House Bill 2988. And actually some of the actions of other districts and decisions that other districts have made and why we are here today. First, I want to make sure that everyone is well aware that we are completely dedicated and committed to the safety and well-being of our students, our staff, all of our staff, and our community members. That is a focus for us. It always has been a top priority. And we are also very dedicated and committed and expect that we do all of us do all our part in keeping our kids in school, and whatever that may be, whatever it takes. We know and the value of in-person instruction every day, and so that's some of the grounding principles of our discussion. The governor rescinded his executive orders a number of months ago, and there is a statute that was written to support the prohibition of any mask wearing. And while we were soaring through the summer with lots of optimism, knowing that we would hopefully be on the tail end of this pandemic, only to be surprised, or maybe not so surprised, in that we are having a third wave, if you will, with the Delta variant. Phoenix Union High School District to our west decided to require masks, and perfectly appropriate for Phoenix Union and their surrounding feeder elementary schools. We realize that there is an increase in the COVID-19 positive cases. We all know that. It's in the news. It's data that's readily available to all of us. Tempe Union is taking the position to be more proactive, but very clear in our expectations to combat the spread of COVID-19 in our schools and our communities, with the primary purpose to keep our kids safe, our students safe, our adults, all of our employees, everyone, but also to continue and have a continuity of instruction for our students. That's real critical to their well-being, quite frankly, to their ability to learn at high levels, because we have some of the best teachers. I will say that over and over again. But we need to do everything possible to make sure that we are able to stay in school. And that is our commitment, which brings us here today. On Friday, as you all are aware, I sent out communication that was directly in alliance with the wishes of the governing board, in that we have expectations of our employees, our students, our families, and to do their part with the health mitigation guidelines that we have continued to keep up to date. Mr. McDonald and his team has done a great job with that. And so today we're also here to look at a resolution, to have discussion around it, and hopefully some action in response to some of the restrictions that were placed on us as a school district to make decisions on our own as it relates to mask usage or anything in terms of health mitigation for the safety and well-being of our students and staff. I hope I framed that somewhat thoughtfully, and we can proceed with this resolution that kind of outlines our intentions, the direction that we would like to go as it relates to responding to some of the restrictions that have been placed on us. President Garcia? Yes, that's smart. We're going to, can you hear me? Oh, okay. He was telling me, we're going to read the resolution right now, and then that every board member has a copy of it on your screen. And Board President Garcia will take input from each of you separately, and we'll have discussion around this. The Tempe Union High School District number 213 of Maricopa County, Arizona, resolution regarding COVID-19. Whereas the Tempe Union High School District number 213 TUHSD Governing Board, the board, supports safe in-person learning environments. Whereas recent COVID-19 exposure and outbreaks have impeded the safety and health of our staff and students, which have created learning disruptions in our school community. Whereas the board supports the implementation of a robust school and district health and safety mitigation plan as recommended by local, state, and federal health agencies. Whereas, given new evidence on the B.1.617.2 Delta variant, the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, has updated its guidance for fully vaccinated people. Whereas, pursuant to this updated guidance, the CDC recommends universal indoor masking as one of many measures to combat the spread of COVID-19 for all teachers, staff, and students, as well as for visitors in our high schools, regardless of vaccination status. Whereas, TUHSD expects that all students and staff will follow the recommended guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control to fight the spread of COVID-19 in our communities, which directly impacts our schools, programs, and ultimately our students. This includes, but is not limited to, taking advantage of vaccine opportunities if you are eligible, universal indoor masking by all students, staff, teachers, and visitors to our schools, regardless of vaccination status, practicing physical distancing to the extent possible, self-monitoring for signs of illness, and staying home if you aren't feeling well, and practicing proper hygiene and being mindful of your own personal space. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Governing Board of Tempe Union High School District, number 213 of Maricopa County, Arizona, that the Tempe Union High School District Governing Board supports in-person learning, local control, and expects universal indoor masking and the adherence to the recommended CDC guidelines for all teachers, staff, and students. While COVID-19 transmission remains high or substantial in our district community, visitors to our high schools will also be expected to follow the universal use of masks while indoors as one of the recommended CDC guidelines. Governor Ducey, Doug Ducey, and all members of the Arizona State Senate and House of Representatives should immediately reconvene the legislature in order to suspend, amend, or repeal Section 12 of House Bill 2898 to be codified as ARS 15-342-05 and allow public school districts in Arizona the local control and flexibility to implement mask requirements as each locally elected school board deems necessary. And the superintendent is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the governor, the president of the Arizona Senate, and the speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mendenville. All right, board members, we will go and take any suggestions for modifications to the resolution, coupled with any comments that you may have as well. So I will begin with board member James.
Thank you. I appreciate the resolution. The only suggestion that I would have, just to be consistent with our use of the word expect, would be in the first sentence where it says we support safe in-person learning environments. And I think, COVID or not, our district has always expected safe in-person learning environments. So it's a small change, but I think it would best reflect what we're trying to put forward. And my thoughts in general on this, I think that we need a mask mandate. I want one in our schools. I think it's insane that we're not allowed to implement one. That said, I see districts coming out one by one with a mask mandate, but what's not being advertised widely is the opt-out provision. I think about our district, and I think Tempe Union is dedicated to transparency. And I do not believe that anything with an opt-out provision can be called a mandate. We are going to ensure that we are creating an expectation. We are going to set a tone. We are going to create a culture of safety, of community, and thinking of everyone and their needs. I believe that we can do more than we could with this resolution and our actions following this resolution than we could just by simply passing a mandate that's not actually a mandate. Simultaneously, I think we can do everything in our power to help get rid of this harmful law, and I appreciate that language in this resolution. I personally am in classrooms across 7 schools every single week with unvaccinated 5th graders. We've had entire classrooms quarantined in the first week of school. We have children living in multi-generational households who might have family members at risk that they do not want to endanger. We know that masking works. We saw it last year. When Prescott lifted their mask mandate at the end of the year, they had an emergency board meeting weeks later to reinstate it because they saw spread for the first time. We know that masking works when everyone does it because my mask is protecting you and your mask is protecting me. I hope to see our district, all our staff, our administrators, our students, families, community members dedicate themselves to the safety of this community. We talk about community building. That's what we've been hoping for in our schools in this return. This is a perfect example of how to do that and how to create caring students who are going to lead our country in the future. I think by ensuring that we are using solid mitigation strategies in our classroom and that we're setting the example, whether that's as a teacher, an administrator, a principal, or a peer, we will help create this culture of safety and care and concern. I know with these added mitigation strategies, we are adding again to our teachers. I know this is another ask in a year that we thought would be more normal. But I know that our teachers, our staff, and our administration want to keep our schools open safely. With that, I also implore the district to consider stipend pay as soon as possible with no strings attached for all of this extra work that our staff has taken on over this past year and a half, and truly for the foreseeable future. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member James. Member Montero.
Thank you. I first just want to say I do support Member James' suggestion that we change supports to expects in the first line, and I do wholeheartedly support this resolution. And as a board and as a district, setting clear expectations for our students, for our staff, and for our community, because we truly are all in this together. We all have a responsibility to make sure that we can stay in person 5 days a week. That falls on all of us. We have been put in an impossible situation, and I'm disheartened and hurt to see proven effective mitigation strategies become topics of controversy and become politicized. We have the tools to be able to stop this virus if we all act cooperatively. We have to do this together. We all have a responsibility in ending this virus. We all have a responsibility in keeping our schools open in person 5 days a week. As much as everyone up here would like things to be back to normal, that's not the situation we're in. And we can't pretend that that's the situation that we are in. And to all of those watching, we do have the means out there. Please get vaccinated. It protects you, it protects our students, it protects our staff, it protects your family, it protects our community. Unlike some of those behind this move who are, quite frankly, out to protect their political futures, we were elected to do a job. And that job is to educate and to keep the health and safety of our students in mind. Other Republican governors across the country are doing exactly what we are calling on Governor Doug Ducey to do in this resolution. They understand the severity of this variant and the dangers it presents to our students, our staff, and our school community. They have called special sessions to change the laws just like this. They are doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. Governor Ducey, it's now your turn. Do what you know is right. Even your own director of the Arizona Department of Health Services has disagreed with you on this move for probably the first time during the entire pandemic. And it shows the severity of the situation. Masks aside, we all have to acknowledge that they're only one piece of the equation as well. And I'm proud of the robust and comprehensive mitigation strategies that Mr. McDonald and the district has put together. Physical distancing, vaccinations, ventilation, etc. are all important factors that we have taken to make sure that our students and our staff are safe. And we cannot diminish that. And I also believe that integrity is an important virtue that we as a board must uphold and as a district. As Member James mentioned, it's important that these are the things that we are focused on as a district rather than providing opt-out provisions, which I think, quite frankly, are not going to have the same effect that we think it's going to have. Everyone on this dais wants nothing more than to keep our students in person for 5 days a week. But again, we all have a responsibility in keeping that a reality. We have set clear expectations for our students, our staff, and community to follow in order to keep this a reality. So I implore you to work with us on this situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Montero. Member Hodge.
Thank you. It's just hard. I want to start off by just telling how I've been for the last couple of weeks. I can't sleep. I can't eat. It is some of the toughest times because no matter what we do, we're not going to save enough people. There's nothing, we have our parents who are support the mask, anti-support the mask. They tell us you need to do this or you need to do that. But as what the governor's done, he's taken it out of our hands. We can't do anything that we need to do to protect our children right now. And it's hard. It's really hard to sit here and know that we're going to pass a resolution, but are we going to really save the lives of the kids and the families that we're going to do? Because we can't do what we were elected to do. We were elected to protect and serve our community, and that has been ripped away from us. So when you want to talk about what we can or cannot do, when you write those emails, you need to write them to Doug Ducey because he took it away from us. This is not our decision anymore. This is all we can do. And it is hard for me to sit here and just look at that. And that's the only thing I can do to protect our kids because our governor decided that it was more political than it was to be human about taking care of our children and our community. So at this moment, I have to say, I'm going to support this resolution. But I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to challenge my community who has written to me since the day I walked on this board. Challenge your governor. Hold him accountable. You have held us accountable, and I love you for it. But hold him accountable. This is something that we were stripped of. Every governing board in the state of Arizona was stripped of this decision. We are not allowed to make decisions that we live in a community where we go to church and go to schools and we go to grocery stores with. We can't protect them anymore. Hold him accountable. Okay, so on that, I want to also add that I would like to add a part of the resolution that if things change, that we give the authority to our superintendent to make the decision without coming directly back to us right away on it, that we don't have to wait on that, because we did that in our resolution last time around. So I would like for us to add that stipulation to it. So if something does change, we don't have to wait for a board meeting to do it. We can actually give it the authority to our superintendent tonight to be added. So when things change, he can actually implement it immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hodge. Vice President Barraza.
Good evening, everyone. First off, I appreciate the time and all the efforts everyone put into really to get to where we are at today as a school district. It's been very difficult. There's been a lot of adjusting last minute, and it hasn't been pretty. And I just want you all to know, and everyone out there, staff, volunteers, students, teachers, parents, that I appreciate all of you for being so dynamic in this time. We all care about our students. You all care about your child. Excuse me. We're sitting here with a very impossible task on our plate, with our hands tied behind our backs. We were told last minute, retroactively, that it is illegal to implement a safety measure that has become political, and it really should never have been. When I was in fire, we wore PPE. We donned it on when we needed to. You know, you never know what you're dealing with, what type of individuals, you're dealing with, or what circumstances. There's a lot of workplace environments, and that's what we do. That's part of our duty. This has become our duty as community members to wear these things. It should not be political. It should be for the moment. It should be to instill the values for looking out to each other and showing that we embrace each other. Whether we like it or not, we should wear it for that reason, because we are a community and we all got to get through this together. And at the end of the day, we should not drive wedges. We should really strive our best to unite. And that's very difficult, again, with our hands tied behind our backs. I cannot understand fully why we would go to such an extreme for these circumstances, and and say to school districts that you cannot implement a mask policy. I want to stay 5 days a week. I don't know what we're faced with. None of us do. We're all going into the fall, and it's going to be a very, again, dynamic environment. There'll be another issue that pops up, and we're all going to have to live with it, adjust to it, and I hope that none of us gets hurt in that process. I really hope schools do not be an epicenter of this pandemic and a mistake that should have never happened in the first place. So those that don't want to wear masks, I ask you, just wear it. Just wear it. You know, our American history is filled with such derivation of duty to pick up. You know, from the Revolutionary War and melting our metals to make bullets, to the Great Depression and trying to figure out how we feed each other in food lines and creating the CCC, to Vietnam, to AIDS, to where we are today. We persevere. That's what we do. And I really hope that the governor is really listening tonight, because I ask you to lift it and give back just local choice, local decision making. We know our communities best. You support local decision making, local governance. And what we really need at that time is to be able to create mitigating procedures that may not be mandatory masks the entirety of the day at a high school, but you can't say wear a mask when you go to the nurse. You can't say wear a mask while you're going through the lunch line, and you could doff it and take it off when you go outside. We can work with that, but we can't work with this. There's just, it's too much politics. I have a lot of questions. I hope we have time tonight, because I feel like this time is very necessary. But I guess I just want the community to know that whatever happens, we got to move forward together, and we got to learn to adjust to whatever that decision making is. With that, I just want to, I guess, start asking questions. So I guess, Sean, what are the numbers? If you have those, do you have those available with us? Mr. McDonald?
Do you want the current dashboard numbers?
If you can kind of give us kind of a rundown again, the community's also listening. It'll kind of, I hope you'll give us a perspective of the all being on the same page.
Sure. Just a minute, please.
Thank you.
So currently, Tempe Union High School District, total active cases as of today, just before this meeting, 53, 47 student cases and 6 staff cases. On-campus cases that are connected are 10. Off-campus cases are 43 at this time. Corona del Sol has 7. Desert Vista has 20. Arcos de Niza has 4. Quintuck has 7. Mount Point currently 14. Tempe High has 1. Of those, again, most are off campus. Again, that's the good news, and most are household exposures. Anything else you're looking for, sir?
What's the rate of change between the previous numbers that we were given? Are those the most current numbers, and then?
Yes, so the last time I reported to
And
you
your perspective on the numbers.
was about 42 as of last week. So we had a change of about 11 total in the last, I'll say, 3 days.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Jordan, I got a legal question, just so I can wrap my head around what's really the directive coming from, well, what's the ARS and so forth. When is the implementation date for that, well, what we're talking about, particularly mask mandate?
So the statute with the mask mandate, HB 2898, will become effective on September 29th. It does have a retroactivity clause, which will also go into effect on September 29th, that makes it retroactive to July 1st.
So essentially on the beginning date, it'll be implemented, but it'll essentially have been implemented since July 1st, is that correct?
There's the possibility that after September 29th, anything you do between now and September 29th could be challenged.
So if we essentially said we would like just masks during movement, and then when you get to your classrooms, the mitigating procedures established by each teacher in each classroom would then take forth, we couldn't even do that, could we?
I think based on the language of the statute right now, any requirement to wear a mask in school during school hours is prohibited under that language.
I appreciate that, thank you. Dr. Mendenville, can we, I guess can we with this directive goes to the governor, is that correct? Okay, can we add language? Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're asking at the moment? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So at this meeting, I see it is, at the bottom. Is that part of the discussion, modification of this resolution?
Vice President Barraza, yes, the resolution in its entirety right now is open for discussion and input from all 5 of you. I think that's number 3 in the bulleted items at the end, where that would be the direction that we would take once this is agreed upon, with any edits from all 5 of you. Of course, we'll have the appropriate signatures and action tonight, and then that would be delivered as soon as possible.
Okay, I have more questions, but I'd like to hear from my other board members to see if they have any other questions. Thank you.
Board members, any other suggestions or comments? Board Member James.
I just have a quick comment. Listening to Mr. McDonald read the numbers, and I heard Tempe High has 1 case. I also have heard amazing things about the rate of masking amongst staff and students at Tempe High. And I think that speaks volumes for the efficacy of masking. And I am sure Tempe High will continue that culture and encourage that culture, and that hopefully those who are not masking on campus will start, and that other schools will follow that amazing example. To have 1 case is pretty spectacular, and again, that really speaks to the efficacy of masks.
Vice President Barraza.
Yes, just in the language, I would like something presented, maybe more explicitly, that we empower our teachers and staff to implement mitigating strategies in their own environments, so long as that is okay with the board. I believe that one of the concerns is that staff does not fully know what they can and cannot do in terms of the legal consequences or whether they're covered. And I, being a teacher, maybe I'm, let's say, teaching math, and I'm happy to sit with you as a student and go over your assignment, but my personal space requires that I wear a mask when you do so. Otherwise, I can grade it and we can go virtually, or I can communicate with you one-on-one from a distance, your assignment. Are staff members allowed to do that? Because I would like something explicitly within this language. I know this is going to the governor, but there's a lot of people that read it, and I believe stating in this language, in this document, empowerment of our staff and teachers to take those measures within the law, and we will support them. It's a support aspect to the document.
Vice President Barraza and members of the board, the health mitigation plan is embedded into everything that we do. So I think, and I certainly appreciate, and if that is the direction from the board, we can make the adjustment. But the work begins now, and that is to begin having our meetings with teachers to invite them again, because now we have all the kids in school and we want to keep it that way, to realize some of the realistic ways in which they can put in place the health mitigation protocol into their classroom spaces. It's very detailed within the plan, but there are nuances to each classroom depending upon the grade, the content. So there's lots of things that we're able to do, and then there are things that we are not, quite frankly. So we have to look at spacing. If we can at least have 3 feet within classrooms, and I know Mr. McDonald's working with various principals around that, so that we can reactivate and prioritize those health mitigation guidelines and have the teachers and staff empowered to make those decisions. With regard to social distancing, we all have an expectation of personal space, whether there's a pandemic in place or not. So it's respectful to be mindful of one's personal space, and so it's and I think those are the things that we have to remind teachers that you have that's fully within your capacity as the instructor to say to a student or to an adult, quite frankly, you're in my personal space, can you step aside for a little bit, and do that very kindly, and redirect, and you can have favorable outcomes just reteaching some of these strategies that we haven't had a lot of time to practice because we have not been in school completely either. And when we were in school the fourth quarter, half the campuses were there, actually less than half. And so they had a lot of distance and a lot of space, that kind of thing. So again, this was sprung on us. We did not anticipate the Delta variant to be so aggressive in this manner, but we are prepared to work with our principals and the department leaders and everyone on training them, and that's part of the professional development, if you will, so that they get that right away. I met with principals early this morning, and that was a subject of conversation as well. But if it's the will of the board to add that nuance to the language here, we would all need to agree on that and where we would place it.
How do we proceed in terms of that, if we did want to modify?
This?
Yeah, do we just say we want modified? Do we make a motion? What's the?
Well, if we can come to some general language, but, and then we can add it.
Okay.
Because we have, yeah, it's not real hard.
So our process right now is to get input from individual board members. Should a majority of a minimum 3 agree, then we can go from there. But at this time, we're taking any suggestions and comments first before making any motions or amendments to anything. Board Member Hodge.
Okay. Vice President Barraza, I understand, but I do want to clear from that because I don't want to put our teachers in a kind of predicament law-wise that if one parent, a teacher comes up and asks that question, it's in our resolution, that teacher is now liable to be sued. I think if we keep it within the district, everybody united, I think that protects our teachers because I don't want to put them in another predicament that they say something because they think that they have the right or the control and they don't totally get the whole law. So I'd rather not put them in that predicament and just keep it in an umbrella that we make sure that the mitigations for every single person in our district is the same and that we educate them like Dr. Mendeville will do. But I'm just not comfortable putting that in there, so I don't want one teacher to get the wrong impression and now lose their teacher certificate that they can do if that situation happens. That's where I'm at on it. I want to protect them legally as well as I want to protect them health-wise.
That was actually my next step, was after stating if there is in there, then the implementation. We don't have to have the language, but bottom line is I would like for you to sit with Sean and you guys present something, pan something out that is sitting with legal that, you can provide to the staff to say, what do you do in these instances? There will be instances and they're just going to be caught up legally in those as well if there is no clarity. So that's kind of my concern overall. And I definitely agree with your sentiment, and that's why I think there ought to be information presented.
Part of the challenge, and not challenge, just the next steps, Vice President Barraza, and is that we have already started a Q&A, a rolling Q&A with this new variable of Delta and what that translates to. How do we, because really the bulleted points, the 5 bulleted points that come from the CDC are what we want to tease out. We've already begun that work in looking at what does it actually mean to practice physical distancing to the extent possible in the various environments. And part of that challenge is we're going to have to look to the actual practitioners on the ground. What does it mean to self-monitor for signs of illness? You would think that would be an easy one, but people, because we're trained to give it our best and we can make it, and oh, it's just a little headache, or oh, it's just a sniffle. Well, we can't do that anymore, but because we're educators, you go in and you plug away. What does it mean for proper hygiene? It's in personal space, as I mentioned earlier. So all those aspects of the the recommended guidelines for CDC are ones that we've already begun the work on in delineating all the details, and then that'll be shared, and will be continued to be shared, actually, and reminded of our teachers and staff. But also, I mentioned earlier the Q&A, so we want to have a rolling Q&A on the website, so not just our teachers and staff, but our community can understand any questions that they may have. We'll have the answers on the website automatically. But yeah, so that's part of a multi-step implementation, which makes our plan a bit more robust than others, in my opinion, and that's something to be proud of, because we're wanting to shape behaviors in the right direction to keep everyone safe and healthy.
Okay. So I guess in the end, just there's going to always be a lot of conversation, I'm sure. So in the end, I suppose where I want to be is I would like to have a mask mandate in instances when numbers get to a point, the way we were in terms of our model. We can take them off when the environment reduces cases and we put them on in environments. That doesn't mean we implement it tomorrow, but it means it becomes part of our program. Now, I don't know how that sounds in terms of our legal, but I think there's room for a compromise, because if the numbers continue to go downhill, we have to have the ability to move in that direction, to shut the leak. We cannot go away from a 5-day school day. We saw the value of our students being in classrooms, and if it pours on us, heavily, and we still have the ability to bring students to class, I say that's a win, because we have the ability to continue that 5-day a week, and that's beneficial for everyone. Ultimately, I think that's the ultimate focal point that we all have to wrap our heads around, is how do we continue that 5-day a week. And that's why I'm not necessarily saying we have to have it in the indefinite school year, but there has to be that time, and that's kind of what I'm advocating for. And I guess the only other thing I would suggest is putting in the language here that I personally, and this is just how I feel, that I think we should send a message verbally that Doug Ducey's a coward. He has not visited a single school in the state. He has not advocated. He has not picked up the phone. He has not created a support system. He has not asked us how we're doing. He has not stepped foot or sent anything by his hand to support us, to let us know that he cares, because he doesn't. And shame on him. He's a coward. He is a definite coward of the worst kind, and I'm very ashamed of his leadership. We should all try to keep that 5-day a week open, and I think there's a compromise in there. That's all. I would like to see that language, but maybe that's just me, but that's all I have.
Jordan, can you answer that for us?
I'll do my best, Member Hodge, Vice President Barraza. I understand where Vice President Barraza is coming from, that their question of where's the line, is there a line? The statute as it exists right now doesn't allow for line drawing. It just says no requirement of a mask mandate to attend in-person school. The lines that may exist are going to be drawn when the county comes in and says you have an outbreak and you have to close a classroom, close a school. But until we get new guidance from the governor, who has the ability to issue an executive order that would give that sort of flexibility, or the statute's repealed, or we learn something else through the court system, right now, the statute doesn't allow for that sort of flexibility that you're asking for.
Sorry, that's tough, and I understand exactly what you're saying in the legal context. Hands are completely tied, and it's remarkably devastating of this aspect. Why would you tie the hands of all of us? Why would you create that policy, that law? It's hurtful. There's no other way to put in front of us. And I am, for one, wanting to do a model that implements that. And I don't know what that means in terms of us legally, but it doesn't mean we got to require it tomorrow, but it does mean it becomes part of our model. And I believe we ought to stand by something like that and say, even if we get, we have the numbers. I mean, if we keep getting the numbers, we have to have it part of our model. We can't shut schools down.
Well, I want to remind everybody, Vice President Barraza, and that we do have a model, and part of that model is inclusive of the information we get and share with the Maricopa County Department of Public Health. I mean, we work cooperatively with them, and I'll give maybe not so good example, but what happened in J.O. Combs with their elementary school, where they had to require that several entire classrooms receive their instruction remotely because of an outbreak there. They, I can tell you, are required to be in direct consultation with the Maricopa County Department of Public Health, as we are. And so we would operate in that same fashion, which is part of our plan, part of our formula, if you will, regardless of what the legislature may indicate. We follow that, and we have all along, and we will continue to do that and base those decisions on the information that we have, on the cases that we verify, and how many students are impacted. There are very clear guidelines that we follow, and that would continue to happen regardless of the statutory requirements that are there, because it won't impact that piece, but it does allow us to remove individuals or groups of students and adults away from the environment to get better and then return.
Yeah, well, we'll see how the fall goes, but I guess the last thing is Brophy Prep is on the news lately because they are requiring mandatory vaccinations. I was just wondering what the sentiments of the district and legal were, because I'm sure that's a whole different discussion that they started. I just wanted to kind of hear opinion, I guess.
Vice President Barraza, members of the board, Brophy as a private school is not bound by the requirements of ARS 15-34205. Actually, under Arizona law, the government has limited, if any, authority over private schools in the state of Arizona.
Thank you, Jordan. Very well said. I appreciate that.
If what you're asking also, Vice President Barraza, is if it's fair, no, it is not fair.
That's kind of what I wanted.
We should all be following the same rules. Kids are kids are kids. Kids aren't any different in a private setting versus a public setting.
Yes, I was being rhetorical in a sense. But I guess in the end, I'll end it here. What I would like to see is a model that includes a mask mandate under those circumstances. Even Washington creates multiple scenarios. Now, it doesn't mean it created policy, but we'll have it locked and loaded should we have the numbers ready to go. I'd like that on standby at least, no matter what happens here tonight. But that's all I have. If we can start that discussion, thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice President Barraza. Member Montero?
I just had a quick comment just to kind of, to Vice President Barraza's point and to Jordan's point, is that, there is so much gray area with this statute and what we can and cannot do and what the ramifications and the consequences are for this. And, I think through a lot of the communication and discussions that I've had with so many community members and therefore, this is not a black and white issue. And this is where I implore you to join us into pressuring the governor that is where our efforts have to go. Because until we get more clarification, or this is repealed or changed from the legislature, we're not going to get, this isn't going to get any better. There is too much gray area, and again, going back to us being put in this impossible situation, you know, it's tough. I haven't been able to sleep since our, you know, our meeting last Wednesday, and I'm thankful for everyone that has sent emails in, and I want you to know that we are reading those and that we do take your input and we are with you. We want to keep the health and safety of our students in mind. We want to implement a mask mandate. And I'm proud of the communication that our, you know, the district has sent out and has communicated, the clear expectations we have for our students and teachers. I think if we reverberate that with our students, with our staff, with our community, they will follow. And we all want 5 days in person. And as long as we continue to have that message, you know, at all of our sites, you know, I want to put trust in everyone, and I hope we can do that. And so we can, you know, we can round the corner on this pandemic. But again, just to reiterate the point that we have to put pressure on the governor, to put pressure on the legislature, because, you know, our hands are tied.
Thank you, Member Montero. Member James?
Yes, kind of following on Vice President Brazza's sentiment about trying to figure out a way to implement some sort of a mask mandate. My question would be, what are the possible ramifications if we did that? Like, what are some of the possibilities, because it wasn't laid out? And I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies. It's a lot of supposition at this point as to what would happen to our district or to our board, and I'm wondering what those potential punitive measures could be, if you have any.
Member James, members of the board, there are no explicit penalties set out in the statute. I don't want to go too far into doing legal advice in a public meeting. If we wanted to call an executive session to discuss more, I'd feel more comfortable there. But it's unknown. Taking action that moves directly in contrast to statutory language does have risks. It has risks for the district. It has risks for you as board members and your qualified immunity that you're granted. I don't, like I said, I prefer, if we want to get into more of that legal discussion, that we would go into executive session to continue.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I just think that there is, you know, if there's the risk of losing funding when we're already underfunded, it becomes a public health concern. When our students do not have safe and secure learning environments, I think that risking that is also a public health concern. This is really impossible to balance. And I think that, just to echo Board Member Hodges' plea, I had a hard time not crying and not clapping over here when you were speaking. We have to direct our energy to the people who have done this to us. And that said, I think we do also, I don't want that to sound like we don't want people to communicate with us. We do. Those emails, public comments, they're important to hear our constituents' voices. So the call is not in lieu of writing to us. The call, I know, is in addition to. We need to hear what our community thinks, absolutely. But we all do need to unify against this law and the legislature and the governor who implemented it. So thank you for those words, Board Member Hodge.
All right, thank you so much, Member James. Member Hodge?
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. I wanted to tell everybody that I wasn't trying to make the community feel that we don't want the emails. I just wanted them to understand that we need to start where the problem lies. It didn't, you know, this was laid in our lap. We also, I wanted to add to it, it's not a problem if you wrote your legislator in that area too, because they they have more of a connection with the governor than we do when it comes to getting his ear. So, you know, it has to come all from all faces. We have to be able to face this in every area, from our area, even to your city council members, to your legislators, to your governor. You guys, we have to write in, we have to communicate how we feel, because this is not a political thing. This is a fight for human. This is a safety of life. One child, people, you know, we're celebrating, we have one at Tempe High. That's one too many. That's one too many that we can lose at any time. This is something that we have to get together and fight behind, because COVID, every time we think it's on the way out, it's another strand that comes up. We have to be prepared. We got to stop being reactive and proactive. And some of the things we have to be proactive is make sure we have strong laws and abide by and mandates around what we need to do in our schools. And that's taken away from us at this moment. So we're all standing here with our hands tied. Our superintendent can't do what he needs to do. The board can't make decisions. This is not fair to anyone in this situation. So we do have to put the pressure where the pressure needs to be at, and that's at the state capitol down there. So I'm just calling out, don't stop writing us, but please start writing him too. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hodge. Vice President Barraza.
Yes, I would just like to know, am I able to ask in terms of how my board feels on modifications? Are we permitted? I just don't know the full context of this meeting in terms of like the explicit.
Do you have any additional suggestions to modifications to the current resolution?
Just I wanted to know more or less how they felt about that, presenting a mask, implementing into our model that mask policy when those numbers hit is more or less, not saying do it right now. And again, I don't want to stress that we would be implementing that today because we can't by law, but we can have it and we can always put it on the plate really quick as soon as we get judicial interpretations. I would hate once we get clarification for us to still be on a stall pattern. And so if we can have that presented, I know it's more on, yours and Sean's plate, but I think if we can just at least have those procedures ready to be implemented should the interpretations allow us to do so. And so that way, when we hit those numbers, if we hit those numbers, hopefully we don't hit those numbers, we can implement procedures and know what those are without scrambling. I'm tired of that for the year. The governor has just been all over the place, and so I think we're all exhausted by that.
Dr. Mendenville, can I respond to that for him?
No, one moment. Okay. I'll allow Dr. Mendenville to respond.
Vice President Garcia, members of the board, I think we have demonstrated that we can pivot fairly well. And I think what you're asking for us to be prepared for is to pivot in the manner that it's going to be responsive and appropriate for whatever it is that we are facing. I'm extraordinarily proud of my team and the work of our principals and teachers, quite frankly, all of us. They have demonstrated repeatedly over and over how we can pivot with information, and I believe that's what you're asking for. We would naturally, within our scope of planning, be prepared for that kind of response, if you will, should things continue to worsen. We have such large schools, or a range of size of schools, that if something happens, it can be contained, or we can assess and determine where the breakout might be. So it doesn't necessarily require that we quarantine the entire school or anything like that. But you never know. But we're lucky because we are so departmentalized. But we have at our disposal to be able to pivot, especially with something like that, pretty easily.
Okay, the idea is not to send a bucking message. The idea is just to create the scenarios that can potentially keep us in the 5-day-a-week school environment.
Always our motivation.
I appreciate that, and so, yeah, that's all I have tonight.
All right, thank you so much. I apologize for that, Ms. Hodge. I just wanted to make sure that Dr. Monroe had a chance to fully elaborate. Ms. Hodge?
All I was going to say is that is exactly what I was trying to do when we did giving him the authority, if something happened, changes, that it would go, we wouldn't have to wait for a meeting. That's the only thing I was going to put back in there, that if we give him that authority, we can pivot a lot faster. We don't have to wait until a board meeting to decide. We don't have to have a resolution. It's already been in a resolution that we've given him the authority to pivot at any time necessary.
Member Hodge and other board members, on August 5th, 2020, you gave the superintendent that authority. That resolution is
You don't have
still,
to-
you don't have to,
Okay, so
it's
that's
never
good.
been rescinded.
That's good.
So he would still have the authority
That's
to
what-
act.
Okay, so that's even better. That's exactly what I was looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan, and members of the board. I also want to convey, too, that anytime a decision is made, the consultation from our board is important to me in our decision-making, and that will continue. Okay.
All right, are there any other comments or suggestions at this time? Because I will be closing the floor. All right, thank you so much. As you all can see, this is not a decision that we take lightly at all. I'm very frustrated, if you could not tell already, that this is where we are. We take our duty and our responsibilities very seriously. We've been working round the clock to make sure that all of our students and all of our staff are safe and healthy. Anything to the contrary is offensive. It is not okay to think otherwise. This is why we are here. We all want to be in person. We have always wanted that, in addition to the previous board. That has always been the common unifying message. No one likes it. Vice President Braz and I and Member Hodge have been, we're approaching almost 2 years now in this. Just like you, we all have the fatigue. Make no mistake, this all could have been avoided. We're 4-ish months away from 2022, and we're still dealing with 2020 and its consequences and ramifications. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to wrap this up, get back to our lives. And I know our students are too, and our staff. I appreciate the district in its message to expect that we all take advantage of vaccine opportunities, that we expect universal indoor masking by all students, staff, teachers, and visitors, regardless of vaccination status. We expect physical distancing to the extent possible. We expect you to self-monitor for signs of illness and staying home if you're not feeling well. We wouldn't want you to come to school if you were not feeling well. That you risk getting others sick. And we expect to practice proper hygiene and being mindful of your own personal space. This is the expectation that we have of everyone. It's going to take all of us to get through this. It isn't just on this board or the administration. Everyone has a piece of this. And making sure that we are taking care of each other. I don't know where we lost sight of that. I'm incredibly grateful for the endless amount of work, countless hours that have gone into making sure we have a strong mitigation plan. Our plan's been adapting It's a living document and addresses every single possible thing that's within our authority to do so. And make no mistake, I know and I trust the district that we will pivot should we have that authority to do so. But I am not comfortable putting our district at risk when it is our duty to protect all of our students and staff. One more thing that I want to address tonight that has been a constant theme of frustration for everyone, not just those of us involved in all of our students' education, but the level of misinformation that continues to spread is detrimental to all of our students. That is not helpful. We all know that the CDC recommendations have an impact. We all want to stay in school. Now let's work together to make that happen. Because if there is an outbreak, the county is going to work with us to have to quarantine students and staff. That is not our goal. So in order for us to have a successful year from here on out, please, please, please wear a mask. Please get vaccinated if you're eligible. Y'all are tired, we are too. Let's get past this. With that, we have one suggestion on the table, and that is to change the language of the first whereas clause from supports to expects. I move to amend the resolution draft with that language in mind. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we will make that, amendment. Having said that, I move approval of our resolution. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm in favor.
Thank you so much. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in and listened to this discussion, and to our board members and staff and our executive team and our administration. At this time, we have nothing else, so I move to adjourn this meeting. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you so much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned.